Dell XPS 13, 2017. Review Intel's 8th Gen CPU makes a great laptop even greater. Forgive us if you've heard this one before, but Dell's latest XPS 13 is truly the best one yet. Seriously. Newly upgraded with Intel's 8th generation CPUs, the XPS 13 offers unheard-of performance in an ultra-portable laptop. By unheard of, we mean the XPS 13 offers performance approaching and occasionally surpassing that of much larger and much heavier powerhouse laptops. Granted, it hasn't changed much on the outside. As we go through the features and specs, though, you'll see the significant changes happening on the inside. The XPS 13 hasn't changed much on the outside, but this 8th generation upgrade is worth it for performance fiends. Prices. Our review unit currently sells for $1,300 from Dell's website, though at the time of this posting Black Friday deals are offering some nice savings. Others from Dell's site range from the lowest-end $800 version, with a 7th generation Core i3 to 7100U CPU, 4GB of RAM, and a 128GB SSD. And the top-of-the-line $1,750 model with same 8th generation Core i7 to 8550U and 256GB SSD. Are Unite, but its memory is boosted to 16GB. CPU. The star of the show is Intel's new 8th generation Core i7 to 8550U based on the same basic microarchitecture as CPUs used in older versions of the XPS 13. The 8th gen chip secret sauce is doubling the CPU cores. Read our in-depth review of the 8th gen CPU for all the details. Up to now, most mainstream laptops have stuck to dual-core CPUs because quad-core CPUs would have required more cooling and bigger, heavier shells to handle the heat. Not anymore. It's truly exciting to see quad-core power fitting into thin and light laptops. RAM, 8GB of LPDDR3 1866. The low-power version of DDR3 doesn't allow for the use of expansion slots, so the RAM is soldered to the motherboard. The good news is Dell used a pair of modules to enjoy the greater bandwidth of dual-channel mode, rather than use a single module that would give you only half the bandwidth. GPU. There's room for a quad-core chip, but not for discrete graphics, so what you get is Intel UHD 620. You might think the U means something special, but from a performance point there really ain't none. Display. You pretty much get the same 1920x1080 matte screen with infinity bezel on the XPS 13 that we've seen since the first model was introduced in 2015. The one in our unit puts out very decent 400 nits, much like the prior version. While it doesn't have the pizzazz of a glossy screen, which Dell offers in the touchscreen version, it does a great job of reducing glare. Storage. A 256GB Toshiba M2 NVMe SSD handles this storage, and if you're willing to risk opening up the XPS 13, you should be able to swap in a larger drive. The right side of the Dell XPS 13 sports the South Dakota card reader, one of its 2 USB-A ports, and the Noble Lock port. Ports. For connectivity, you get 2 USB 3.0, 5 Gbps Type A ports, and South Dakota card reader, combo audio and a single Thunderbolt 3 port. That Thunderbolt 3 port is a 2-lane implementation, rather than 4-lane, so maximum throughput is less than what you'd get with some competing laptops. There's also a square lock port supporting Noble locking cables. The XPS 13 supports and ships with a standard barrel charger, but you could also charge via the Thunderbolt 3 USB-C port. While having a dedicated charging port means the Thunderbolt 3 USB-C is available for other uses, we hope the next version will offer 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports and a USB-C charger in the box. Weight. The non-touch version we tested weighs in at a barely there 2 pounds, 12 ounces. Dimensions. The size of the XPS 13 remains the same at 11.98 x 7.88 x 0.33 inches. It has a much smaller footprint than a MacBook Air 13, but it's thicker than HP's Spectre X360 13T. Think of it as stout. In practical terms, this XPS 13 hasn't changed much from the prior, 2016, version using 6th gen CPUs. That's actually been one of the complaints about the XPS 13. It hasn't had a major redesign since this generation made its debut in 2015. You know what? We're okay with it. Why should Dell mess with success? Apple, for example, hasn't really made major exterior changes to its popular MacBook Air 13 since 2011 or maybe 2010. We, frankly, can't tell. The XPS 13 still wins on size and portability. We still love the trackpad. We think the keyboard is a little small, but still good, and we still think the webcam is really awkwardly placed along the bottom of the display bezel. The real change here is inside, and it's all about performance. When Intel announced the 8th gen Core CPU, it had successfully squeezed quad-core performance into places it couldn't before. We were highly skeptical of how much actual practical performance you could wring out of a tiny laptop, when all quad-core laptops before it weighed usually twice as much. We tested the 8th gen XPS 13 against two predecessors, a 7th gen Core i7 XPS 13